Hey guys, Shane here from Fugatech 3D Printing, and today we're going to start part 1 of the build of the Trianglelab D-Force Mini Delta 3D printer kit. So let's get started. Alright, so we're going to start building this D-Force Mini 3D printer kit. This is a Delta style printer, and we're going to do the frame in this episode here. So we're going to do the bottom first, bottom top. It's using this 20 by 60 aluminum extrusion and these corner brackets, and they go together just like so. Using M5s. Actually, the instructions, I have the instructions over here on my laptop. They say M6 by 20 screws. Well, there are no M6 screws in all of this, and every bag is labeled, which is really nice. So you can see there, it's legible. So it's M5 times 20, 45 pieces of it. So it's really easy to figure out what you have, instead of having looking at inventory sheet or the G-Tech I have. All my printers are kits. So the G-Tech I had, each bag was numbered, and you had to go to the inventory to see what number, what sizes were each number, what was labeled what. And the Fugatech FT5, everything was just thrown into a bag. So that actually took about 2 hours to sort out, and I really didn't like that. But this is super easy. So let's see how it goes. I've got my metric set of Allen wrenches here. So we're going to need this. This is a 4mm, and start putting this together. So let's check it out. Okay, so I've got the bottom done. You can see it here, and it is super duper solid, and it is remarkably all, I guess, square might be the term, even though it's not a square. Everything's flat. So we have a nice flat surface. So if you don't start with this flat, I guarantee you're going to have issues. It was the same thing with the FT5 using the 2020 extrusion. When you build that first level, you have to make sure you push down everywhere, loosen things up, push down, then retighten. Make sure that your base is absolutely square. We're going to have to do the same thing with the top, but if you don't start with a square base, the whole thing is off. Alright, the next part on the bottom is to install the screws that are going to be in order to hold in the, we're going to call them the Z-axis, but the vertical rods slide in to each one. I can't quite get it. It's a little tight to get in there, but these slide in, and you have to have a way to lock those in. So that's using M5 by 16s, M5 washers, and some M5 T-nuts, and we put them in each one of these, and that'll be the next step to get this base settled in. Alright, so now that we have those installed in there, this bottom is now done. So I didn't realize we had to do that now. So now that's done, we're going to move on to the actual base plate. So here's the base plate here. This is just a 1/4 inch laser cut acrylic, and we're going to be adding the feet onto this, and we're going to be adding on the T-nuts and bolts and various things in order to attach it to the bottom of the base plate. So I don't know if you're supposed to, but I'm taking the paper off of this acrylic. I mean, I guess if you don't want to see through it, but I don't know. Kind of like being able to if I wanted to, so it's kind of like showy in a way. Hey, all the electronics are inside. So I'm gonna sit here and peel all this paper off. I got one side done, and all these holes, because they're laser cut into it, make it really hard to peel it off as one solid sheet. So this will just take me a jiff, and we'll get these feet installed. So here it is in all of its glory. Nothing left on there. So the feet are just these simple rubber feet. They go right there in that middle hole. Little M5 bolt on the top, and you can just use a Allen wrench, and I just use an adjustable if you have sockets or whatever else you have, and just tighten that down just a smidge. You won't do it too tight because you will crack the acrylic. So just do it, just tight enough to make sure that it's not going to come loose on you in the future. But just do that. Hold that on there. And tighten it down. Finger tight is more than enough. My dad actually has a pretty awesome set of Allen wrenches. They're T-handles, but they are, I guess, like self-torquing is what I'll call them, or you cannot over-torque with them, be the way they're designed. And I told him I liked them, but I can't find them anywhere. I haven't looked real hard yet online. Basically, it's the Allen wrench comes down, and this goes up and over, and it stops right here. It doesn't actually retouch. So when you tighten it, it actually will bend, and that's how you know that it's tight enough to hold. So anyways, there's the feet. That's done. Now we're going to use M5 by 12s and M5 T-nuts. We're going to get them all installed on here, and then we'll be able to attach this plate to the bottom of the frame. I'm going to go ahead and do that and come back to you. Alright, now that we have all those M5 by 16s in, all the T-nuts are on, we all have to line it up onto the frame. So actually having the paper off makes this super easy to see and get all these turned the right way so it can just fall in to place like that. Okay, so now they're all in there, and now it calls for you to use M5 by 16 or 20s. It gives you two options, which is pretty odd, and these go into the three corners like so. And now I'm just going to go ahead and tighten down all of these, and this bottom will be pretty much done. Alright, so I have to say, these are pretty tough to screw into the plastic because they're biting into it a lot. So I'm going to whip out the electric screwdriver. I actually didn't realize I had bits for it, which I really don't. I'm just using some bits from a screwdriver. This will make this a lot easier because these are pretty hard. Nice and slow, wait till that turn down a little bit more. But yeah, this will make this a lot easier, so I'm going to finish these up. Alright, so now those are all on. That is the end of the bottom plate. This is really rigid. I mean, the 20 by 60 is really good, and it's very, if I tap anywhere, we're square up, so I didn't put a level on or anything, but you can check that later. So this bottom part is done now. Now we're going to go ahead and build the top. It's in the same fashion as the bottom. They all just screw in like this. They screw together. Once we get this done, we'll be adding in the M5 T-nuts into the side to lock it in, and then we'll be able to add in the vertical bars. Now the top actually does matter what way, the bottoms did matter which way they went on, but the tops have this extra nook, like niche in them, and looking at the instructions, this notch goes to the top. So be sure that you have them all facing the same way so that when you're done you don't have to take anything apart and redo it. So I'm going to put all this together now. Alright, so now we have the top assembled, so it's all there. I checked to make sure that it was, you know, nice and square, it's flat. I added in these T-nuts in here with the bolts. So this will be for the vertical rails to go into. The last thing we need to do for the top is we need to add these acrylic pieces to each corner like so. And this is going to be pretty much the exact same way we did it for the bottom. I'm going to peel the tape off. I'm going to add on all of the M5 by 12s with their T-nuts, and then there's going to be two more bolts that go into these here, which anchor it down actually into the 3D printed part. I did already try and test fit these vertical bars. They are very tight because every 3D print obviously does not come out exactly the same. They come out super similar, but not quite exactly. So they are a bit tight to get on there. It's going to be a little bit finicky to get that there, but we'll get to that in a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and put these together, attach them, and we'll come back and see how it looks. Okay, so if you're wondering why am I doing wiring now, it's because I have to. The way these end stops are wired, they actually they will come right through where the 2020 extrusion goes in to this slot. So if you don't do it now, you're never gonna be able to do it. So I've got all those in. They were kind of a pain. I will suggest though that after you solder them, you're doing the outside two connections. You need to bend them in a little bit because there's not enough clearance in the printed part down in here. It's too hard to kind of zoom in there. There's not enough clearance for them to be straight down, especially if you're soldering it that way. So you either need to solder it from the side, which is just dumb, or just bend the tabs a bit. I bent the tabs a bit. Hopefully they'll still work. But now we're going to go ahead, we're going to add in the 2020 extrusion. So we're starting with the top piece first. In this extrusion, there is a hole drilled, if you can see it right through here, in one of the sides. This needs to be on one of the insides when you put this through, and it actually is going to go down towards the bottom, and that's probably where it's going to pass down through into the bottom area where it's going to connect to the board. So you just have to feed this, hold the cable here, feed this down without pinching the cable, and then lock it in place with the T-nut, and then we're gonna add in a M5 to the end to fully lock it down. So I'm gonna add those three now, and then the next part's gonna be the pulleys. We have to do the pulleys now simply because once they're on, they're on. You'd have to take off either the entire bottom or the entire top to get the pulleys back on. Actually, that's not necessarily true. You could take off one side of the rollers, but we don't want to do that. We're kind of going to try and go with this. That's going to be part of the chassis build. So I'm going to put this together. We'll come back and we'll do the pulleys next. In this extrusion, there is a hole drilled, if you can see it right through here, in one of the sides. This needs to be on one of the insides when you put this through, and it actually is going to go down towards the bottom, and that's probably where it's going to pass down through into the bottom area where it's going to connect to the board. So you just have to feed this, hold the cable here, feed this down without pinching the cable, and then lock it in place with the T-nut, and then we're gonna add in a M5 to the end to fully lock it down. So I'm gonna add those three now, and then the next part's gonna be the pulleys. We have to do the pulleys now simply because once they're on, they're on. You'd have to take off either the entire bottom or the entire top to get the pulleys back on. Actually, that's not necessarily true. You could take off one side of the rollers, but we don't want to do that. We're kind of going to try and go with this. That's going to be part of the chassis build. So I'm going to put this together. We'll come back and we'll do the pulleys next. Okay, so now we have the bulk of the frame done. We have the whole top, the whole bottom assembled. The top is assembled. I've only tightened down the T-nuts just to make sure they stay in place. You're not supposed to add in the top ones, the top M5s yet, or the bottom obviously, so it's not together. So now I'm going to build the pulleys, and I'm not going to bore you with step by step in that because it's in the instructions, but I've got most of the pieces here laid out. I have noticed that the actual wheels are already put together for you. They actually show here that you have to pound them together, which I didn't have to do. Looking through it though, and it's calling for some plastic or nylon, I'll say, washers to go in with these, and I'm not sure if that's just between them or if we need them otherwhere, but I mean, it looks like that's just what was put in between the two bearings inside of here. But again, like I said, it's kind of hard to tell because I can't pull these apart and ensure that they are in there, but I'm going to assume that they are. So I've got pieces laid out here. We're going to build 3 pulleys, and we're going to go ahead and put them on, get this thing finally put together, and then the framework will be done. Again, a few things to note here. All of the parts for these pulleys, I'll call them, the carriages, were all contained in one bag, which is great. So there's no searching or anything like that for all the parts. They're in there. Again, having an electric screwdriver comes in handy because this just goes by so much quicker. These are 40 millimeters. Just slow down when you get to the end, pop it off, and there it is. So we're getting there. This is just the longest part here, is just threading these on. Alright, so we're a couple hours later. Ran into an issue when I was trying to put together the pulleys where the wheels don't actually fit on the M4x40 bolts. I contacted the company. They said they were pretty sorry about that. I don't know if this is a pre-release of this or what it is, but either way, this just doesn't work. It doesn't work like it looks in their instructions. They just don't fit. So they're sending me new ones. takes me about 2 weeks to get mail here, so it's gonna be at least 2 weeks until I get them. But I'm gonna go ahead and put the rest of this together. I can attach these on later by just putting on one side together, putting it onto the 20 by 20, and then putting the other side on and kind of wiggling it a bit. Or I can, you know, pop it off and we'll put them on again later. But we're gonna put these aside. I got everything here in a little container, and we're gonna come back to that part in about 2 weeks. But we're gonna finish up the build of the frame now. Alright, so what we have to do now is we have to attach the top part of the frame here to the base. And there's a special note because, as you can see, now that I have this done or put together, you can see here, you can tell, here is the limit switch wires. They come through the hole that's here inside this 20 by 20. Well, when you thread this down through, so we're going to turn this over like so, you have to be careful because this wire can get pinched down here in this, you know, this corner piece. So you kind of have to hold it, you know, I think you have to bring it around to the inside and then hold it there while you push it down and then put it out. So it's kind of tricky, and they give several pictures here on how to do it, but you need to be really careful when you do this, because if you break this wire, unless you have some spare around somewhere, you're not going to have any. You're going to have to, you know, replace the limit switches. So I'm going to go ahead and put that together, and we'll come back, and pretty much all there's going to be left to do is just bolt this together and it'll be done. Alright, so I got this all together. It took about 10 minutes, I'll say, almost. So you kind of have to push one side down, you know, while minding the wire, and then so you can kind of see here where it's coming out here at this, on the last bolt, there's 3 here. You push one side down, mind the wire, rotate it. So I was spinning counterclockwise for me, since I have the wires coming out to the left, and then go to the next one, you know, line it up, push down a little bit, push down a little bit. You can't just do the whole thing at once, which was, you know, a little time consuming. I've never built one of these 2020 aluminum extrusion deltas, so this might be how they all are. This might be how only this one is. But you know, either way, we've got those all done. Now all I have to do is get the M5 by 16s. We're going to put them into each end of the aluminum extrusion for the vertical bars, and then we're going to tighten down the T-nuts here on the inside once that's done, and then the actual frame part will be complete. So I'm going to do that and we'll come right back. Alright, well, here it is. The frame is now complete with the end stops wired in. It's really not too heavy. I'd probably guess it to be around, you know, 10-12 pounds right now with all this aluminum. But it's, I mean, it's super duper rigid, super solid construction. This is going to be really nice. Hopefully it can produce some nice prints. You know, like I said, aside from having those pulleys, you know, not fitting on the bolts, which is a bummer, but other than that, everything came out, you know, really well. So that's going to be it for this one. Well, for the hardware part at least. I'm now going to proceed on to, well, we'll cut this one here. I'm going to proceed on to putting in the electronics now, as much as I can. Pulleys are next, and then the stepper motors mounting in there. Get the board going. Do as much as I can without needing the pulleys. I don't know if I can attach the pulleys on without or the belts without the pulleys. So we'll see how that goes. So let's talk real quick about what I think so far. So far it's not a bad kit. Again, this is my 3rd kit now. The first one I'm actually filming me doing. Each kit is missing a little something. There's some type of small problem. The Fugatech was missing some screws. It also had 0 organization, you know, none whatsoever, except for the M5 5mm for holding the melamine parts to the 2020 extrusion. Other than that, nothing was organized whatsoever. The G-Tech was missing screws as well. I actually had to go to a local hardware shop and pick some up. The Fugatech I could kind of muddle my way through with what was giving. And the G-Tech, at least all of the bags were numbered 1 through, I'll say, 60. And I had an inventory sheet that listed out number 1 is threaded rods, number 2 is this piece, 3 is this piece. And it went through there. So when it called out for an M5 by 6mm, I'd go down the list, find M5 6mm, that's bag 20, grab that piece, and that was it. This kit takes it a step further, where there's no real inventory sheet. Well, there is, but each individual bag is labeled exactly what it is. So M5 by 16, and how many pieces there are. Now, it said in the original paperwork I think I got that, or in the very beginning of this document, that there are extras supplied. So there's at least 2 to 3, I'm noticing, of each one of these bolts that I've used, extras. So, which is really nice. So it says 15, but there's like 18 in the bag. You know, it says 42 for the M5 by 12s. There's over 50 that were in there. So that's really nice to see that they looking out for that, and in case you were to lose something or you would need one for something else, you have it. So good on them. The hardware itself, you know, it's kind of what you would expect out of a, you know, a Chinese kit. It's not the best in the world, but it's not total crap. I mean, I'll give them that. The prints for these corner brackets, the prints for the pulleys, the actual, you know, what actually is moving, the non-moving parts, they all look to be very well printed. I believe they're around 100%, or they're at least 50 to 80%, because they're pretty heavy, so they have to be pretty high density. And I was talking to someone on the folder, or someone had commented somewhere, and they had said, well, maybe that roll that I had, they actually printed these parts with that roll, and I got what was left over, which is a very interesting concept for them to do that. At least, you know, I guess, that the filament roll is good, but obviously wasn't printed on this because it's a kit. Other than that, again, so far I'm liking the kit. The instructions are very well laid out. They're in Chinese and English. You know, there's a little Chinese bottom, and then there's the English. Some of them are broken, so clearly, or I shouldn't say clearly, but most likely Google Translate was used to create these directions. But again, the pictures say it all. It's almost like a Lego. You see the Lego drawing, or the picture of it, and then the next step you see what else was added, what else was added, what else was added, and you go through that. This is basically how their instructions were. So I really like that. So yeah, so far it's a good experience, and let me know what you guys think. So if you like this video, give it a like. If you want to see more of my channel, you can subscribe down below. If you want to help out my channel, you can hit me up on Patreon. Donate $1 or more my way. I greatly appreciate it. Go start helping the channel. And all that being said, until next time, happy printing.